Hello, Glenn Peoples here, Monster Guitars, and as I mentioned at the end of the workshop setup video, I'll give you a closer look at what I've got. Come here. Come here. So I went to a great building recycling and demolition place up in Palmerston North and came back with this load of, it's mostly Demu, which is a really nice timber. Now there are some other pieces in here as well. That one is Matai, that one is Tawa. But it's all messy, obviously, very messy. And I'm going to use this to make the top of a nice woodwork bench. There might be enough here to do more than a top, but there is at least a top lurking in there. So it's going to require some work, obviously. It's in pretty, well, it's not in bad shape. It's not hugely warped or anything. It's just very rough sawn, needs cleaning up. So what I'm doing just at this second is replacing the blades in my thicknesser because they're in bad shape. I'm gonna try and get good at sharpening blades out of thicknessers and jointers. But in the meantime, well, actually, I tell a small lie. I bought some blades so that I could replace the ones that are in here, and then I was going to take these ones out and sharpen them, and then when the new ones got dull, I would just repeat the process, swap them out, and while the other ones were out, I would sharpen them. Turns out they're double-sided blades, so that the cutting edge is sharp, obviously, but the other edge is also sharpened, so that you can just take the blade out and turn it around and put it back in. So I've still got the new blades, and I won't put those in just yet. Anyway, enough about that. I'm sharpening the blades. No, I'm not sharpening the blades. I've just clarified, that's a lie. I'm switching the blades around so that they will be sharp, and then I can get started on this. Well, I've just put one of these through the thicknesser on all four sides, and now it looks really good. Just to give you an idea of how nice the timber is underneath. Obviously, one of the things I need to do, because the thicknesser is good, but if the boards aren't perfectly straight to begin with, if they're even slight bows, then even after you've thicknessed them, they'll still have the same bow in them. And some of these are, I mean, none of them are terrible, but some of them aren't perfect. So I need to put them across my jointer before I do the final thicknessing. And at some point, I will probably want to upgrade to a larger jointer. The benchtop jointer is really handy, but it's not as effective for very long boards. So one thing I'm going to have a go at doing, we'll see how successful I am, is building an extension table, an extension outfeed table onto this. The top is thick MDF, which is very straight, but I'll reinforce it with some framing underneath, and I'll probably put some framing on either side so I can clamp it from below to the table nice and tightly and make sure it's nice and level. And I have some adjustable cabinetry feet so I can really fine-tune the height of it. It should work. In lieu of having a larger table, a larger table on the machine itself, that should work. We'll see how I get on. So here is the extension table for the outfeed table on my jointer. It's not supposed to be visually appealing. What it is supposed to be, and it certainly is nice and flat and very robust and strong, so that it's not going to be bending or flexing or sagging. It's pretty thick MDF, and it's not that long, so it's unlikely to sag, but just because it seems like the right thing to do, I've shored it up with some framing timber. It's pretty solid now. That's really unlikely to change shape terribly much at all. So I've got everything screwed together. Yep, that's not moving. Obviously the table is too short. That's why I've got the feet, which I will now attach, and I'll show you how I'll do that. And I'll also put some bracing strips, that's what I'll call them, some pieces of wood on either side so that I can clamp those onto the table on the jointer. You might wonder, what am I doing there, drilling into existing holes? This bit is 11 millimeters, whereas the hole was only 10 millimeters, and the opening of the hole just needs to be a little bit wider than the hole itself, and that's because of what I'm just about to put in there. Bear with me, as I wasn't fully prepared to shoot the video. Okay, so this little device is called a T-nut, I guess because it's the shape of a capital T when you put it on its side. And you can see it has these little barbs that will stick into the wood, and there is a thread in there because it is a nut after all. And I probably won't be able to hold the camera and hammer at the same time, but I'm going to hammer these in. I've already done one here, and then I can screw in the feet on the bottom. I've got all the other three in. You don't need to see me do them all. One is enough. Right, now that won't be sitting quite level yet. I need to adjust the feet properly. I think we're done. I've adjusted the feet and I've got it sitting at the end of the machine table, and I've tightened it up using that piece of wood, one on each side, screwed tightly onto there with a clamp, and I've checked it with a ruler, and it's level with the table. If that remains stable, and it should, it's pretty heavy, pretty solidly built and clamped in place pretty tightly, then that's a success. We'll see how this goes. Not tonight, because jointing at night is inconsiderate to neighbours, but in a few days' time. That works brilliantly. That's really good. I'm happy with the way that's performing. That's nice and flat. Still got little holes in it. And I won't take off so much that I eliminate all those holes. I don't need to. They'll be inside the bench top. They'll be totally invisible and will make no difference. But that's good. Really good. I'm pleased with that little workshop hack. Planing wood is just inherently satisfying. I'm developing a new favorite here, my number 6 Stanley plane, which is not quite, as I may have mentioned earlier, not quite a jointing plane in number 7, but it's getting up there. It's a decent size and weight, and wow, I mean, yeah, a nice sanding job is good, but nothing really beats planed wood for smoothness. That's like glass if it's a properly sharpened blade. And Limu, well, old Limu like this is very hard wood, so every time you come to plane it, no matter how good you think your plane is, I've learned recently, just sharpen it before you start. You'll thank yourself later. A sharpened plane is really a thing of beauty. Now I just need to turn it and do the other side. This, of course, will minimize the amount of work that I have to do. Well, actually, I'm going to have to thickness this one down a little bit But when you start getting close to the thickness you want, plane it. Plane it, plane it. It will produce a cleaner job than anything else you can do. I'll just take a moment and show you something that I'm working on. I won't take much of your time, just an aside. So I chose my machines in this workshop because they were good ones for making guitars, and they are. They're good. They fill that function very well. When you make guitars, you're not dealing with huge pieces of wood. There are tools everywhere at the moment. Maybe I should have tidied up before making a video. You're not dealing with massive pieces of wood. So things like a small jointer and a relatively small thicknesser are perfectly okay. But when you turn to larger scale carpentry jobs like building a workbench, you start to reach the limits of those tools. And so, for example, I built that extension table, and I'm now building a longer table for the thicknesser as well. Some of you will know what snipe is. It's right at the end of a piece of thicknessing or jointing where the machine makes a louder buzzing sound and cuts off a little more so that it's slightly thinner at the end, which of course is not what you want. That's snipe. And it can be caused by a few things. For example, putting a long heavy board through a small thicknesser where the board is not well supported because the outfeed table is quite short, and so the board may tilt downwards, forcing the end of it up into the blade a little bit more, and you don't want things like that. So I'm building a larger table out of 18mm MDF, and as with my other table hack, I'm reinforcing it with some framing. I'll put feet on it, and I'll use that henceforth for the long boards for the workbench. I may just use it henceforth in general. We'll see how effective it is. Well, there's the extended table in the thicknesser, and it works pretty well. I put that section through, and it did a good job on that. To increase stability so that it didn't wobble back and forth, I drilled 2 holes in the metal infeed table and did the same on the outfeed table, one on each side, and then you won't be able to see it because of other things that I've done. I put some screws underneath and attached the old table to the new table, and I thicknessed some 2x4 framing to just the right height to support the table and screwed that on as well. And I did the same at the back. So it's pretty solid, certainly as solid and even more so in terms of movement as the original infeed and outfeed tables, and it does a good job. So the next time you see it, I'll be thicknessing what is now rather messy, possibly with a bit too much glue, that section there. We're just about there. I guess the way to check is to put the surfaces that you want to glue together, which I shall now. I'm not really the nervous type, but if I was, this is when I would start to get nervous because big things are about to happen. So this is the final dry clamp up of the bench top, which is now glued into 2 pieces. The join is there. I've been having some ideas about what I will do about the fact that there are so many holes in it. I mean, it's not really the end of the world that they're there, but I think I can make things a little bit better. It's late at night, so I won't do the gluing up now, but tomorrow tomorrow I'm going to make this one piece. Time for the big glue up. Now a plane, like a scraper, but a plane, any bladed hand tool, if used well, leaves a very smooth, shiny, almost glassy surface, which is great for aesthetics, but it's not necessarily good for gluing. So what I've done is I've just sanded the two surfaces that are going to be glued together very lightly with some 120. You could even use 80, but I used 120 grit sandpaper just to scuff them slightly. That does make for a better glue adhesion. I'm using polyurethane glue. That is good for big joints like this, I think. And it expands, which is a little bit forgiving. I may have mentioned that already. I mention things lots of times. It expands, so it'll fill any small imperfections and crevices and whatnot. That balance between not enough and too much. I usually err on the side of too much, unintentionally, but it's better to have too much that you can clean up afterwards than to have not enough and you haven't got a very effective glue joint. Right. Okay. Now, I guess we just clamp. Polyurethane, I mean, all glue potentially slides around a bit. Polyurethane glue slides around quite a lot. So I'll secure the pieces to the table as I secure them to each other. Okay, now I'm getting what seems like decent squeeze out of glue all along that join, but not too much because I hopefully didn't put too much glue in there. But I guess now I just leave this. I want to make sure it's as good as it can be before I leave it, but I think I'm just going to have to say this is as good as it can be, and come what may. Fingers crossed, touch wood. I'll leave this to bake overnight. Even though earlier in this video I praised the merits of planing over sanding, because planing gives you a smoother finish more quickly, and it does. In order to get to that kind of smooth finish with sanding, you have to spend more time going up through the different grits, getting finer and finer. Even though planing is good, I ended up sanding the whole surface of this benchtop with 60 grit on my random orbital sander over there. So I took to it with a plane initially and just planed off the high points and did the same on the underside. Doesn't matter so much what the underside looks like for obvious reasons because no one sees it. But I did do a tiny amount of damage on top, some cuts and scratches here and there, and it was just easy to make it nice and smooth by sanding it. So I will spend time as we get close to the end of the build sanding it with 120 and then 240, and that should be enough. I haven't got a circular saw yet because I am on a limited budget, but it's on the agenda. I want to make this bench a rectangle. Now I guess I will get started on the legs.